I've been sitting here for the past couple of hours and I've been wondering, should I upgrade my MPC Live 2, which I've had for about 3 years now, to the MPC Live 3? And that is not really an easy question for me to answer. What the MPC Live is, to me, is a standalone music creation tool that has evolved over the years to basically become a DAW in a box, honestly. I do think that if you are considering getting an MPC Live and you've never bought one before, you don't have any of the earlier versions, and you think that this would be a great tool for you in your studio, that yes, I would highly recommend you consider the MPC Live 3. It is, I think, without a doubt, probably the best and most capable MPC. Well, okay, best is subject to a person's opinion, obviously. There's a lot of folks out there, I understand, that really like the old MPCs. I never owned any of those old MPCs, so I can't compare to those. But I will tell you that it is definitely the most capable MPC, the most feature-rich MPC that has ever come out up to this date. As you can see, I am a fan of MPC products. I also have the Akai Force, and I don't feel right now tempted to sell the Akai Force. And that's mainly because the way these buttons and these knobs are laid out, it really adds something different to my workflow that I can't get out of the MPC Live 2 or even the Live 3. So the Live 3 has it where you can have 4 different sounds on each of those pads, but I can't imagine that actually playing those, if you were going to have different notes, like I don't even know if that's a capability, having 64 different notes that you can access on a scale like you can on this. But even if you could, I'm not sure that it would be as easy to play. The Akai Force does not have the same kind of capabilities with its pads that the MPC 3 has, as I understand it. The ability to access 64 different notes of a scale, which can be around 5 octaves approximately on a keyboard, that makes creation a lot different than doing it on the MPC Live 2 16 pads. The ability to play low notes and high notes at the same time can really help you in your compositions. You're not locked into a smaller segment of notes to where you would have to change menus, and there's people who can do this very quickly. You don't have to hook up an external keyboard. In addition, you've got the layout of these knobs with their individual OLED displays that says what each of these cue links is controlling at any given time. For those reasons, right now, I do intend to keep the Akai Force. The way I use the MPC and the Akai Force is for a focused workflow. What's great is that you have most of the capabilities of a DAW, not all capabilities. Some capabilities that a DAW doesn't have in some cases with that hardware integration. What you have is an opportunity with these devices to create music where you're not distracted by other things that you could possibly be doing on the device. So in other words, like whenever you're working in a computer DAW, obviously you may have it set up to where you get notifications for things like your email or your text messages that come right onto your computer. And those things can be very distracting to your workflow. That's why a lot of people try to get away from DAWs. And whenever I say DAW, usually the way that I define a DAW in my world is a digital audio workstation that exists on a PC, Mac, or Linux computer. One of the limitations of an MPC, whenever you think of it as a DAW, is that right now there's a limited number of plugins that you can use with it. That's because the different plugin manufacturers actually have to port their plugins so that they work on the MPC Akai operating system. And that's not an easy thing to do. So if you buy one of these things and you're thinking that you're going to be able to put in your Roland Cloud plugins, that's not possible at this time. That could be seen as a disadvantage or an advantage, because having less plugins means that you're limited, and maybe you're limited in a good way, because as you've probably seen on other YouTube videos, that limitations often will lead to greater creativity. You're not as likely to be trapped in a cycle of option paralysis. You're going to be able to make decisions more quickly on what types of plugins you want to use, what type of effects that you want to use, because you don't have as many of those things to choose from. Now, you do have a whole lot to choose from, though. So don't think that option paralysis is automatically not going to be an issue. Also, you don't need to feel like you're going to be overly limited by the choices that exist inside these devices, because they really are good quality and they have lots of options, and you can have hours and hours of fun making music on these things. I've created a lot of different beats. I've finished a few songs on the MPC, and it's just really a lot of fun. And the quality of the construction is really top-notch. I mean, these things are very, very solid, and they're not light either, which is something else that you might want to consider. Okay, the weight and the size of this thing. So I'm going to hold up my keyboard here, my Apple keyboard, so you can compare. So you can see, you can get an idea of the size of this thing. It's not small and it's not light. So if you have dreams or fantasies about sitting on a park bench someplace, riding in a subway, and creating on your MPC, I am not sure that I would recommend that. Now, maybe for a park bench it would be okay, or a picnic table somewhere, but this thing is big and it does attract attention if you're not careful. You know, if you're in a place that's kind of shady, then, you know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you pull that thing out and start using it. This is a standard size backpack, I would say. Probably maybe about 18 or 20 inches, maybe a little bit bigger than that. I didn't take out a ruler and measure it. But the MPC Live, does fit inside of it, but it's kind of tight. So that's going to be another consideration. If you like to use small backpacks, I'm not sure how well this is going to fit in those. And also the MPC Live 3 is a little bit larger than this. It's a little bit wider, is my understanding, about an inch wider. So I wouldn't really call these necessarily compact, but whenever you consider that it has a built-in audio interface and everything that it can do standalone, it's got the speakers that sound pretty good. As a complete music making package, it is pretty small. So I don't know. I may upgrade to the MPC Live 3. I'm probably going to wait a little while, because maybe the prices will come down, or maybe you'll start to see them for sale used on Reverb, hopefully. There'll be some people that are buying them because of the hype that's being generated right now. And then maybe after a few months, they're going to realize that it's not really for them, and they'll put it up for sale. And so maybe I can get one at a discount for a couple of $100 less than they retail for right now. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for. But if you've never had an MPC before and you're really thinking about getting one, I think that I would recommend it. You give it a try. Another thing to consider is that the screen size is small. Even though there is companion software available for the desktop, which is another great way of using the MPC as a controller for the MPC software DAW. But I will say that that software DAW is not really what I would consider a complete DAW at this time. It's improved over the last 3 years that I've been in the MPC world, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a complete DAW, that you could use in the same way that you're going to use Ableton or Cubase or something like that. Sometimes when I just want to focus on making music and I don't want any kind of distractions, that's whenever I like to turn to devices like the MPC. So for example, I could be in my bedroom and just jamming away. Even though it does have built-in speakers, of course, you can use headphones. You can record in places that you might not normally be able to record if you're using a desktop DAW as your primary way of recording music. You can start a music project in your kitchen. You can move into the living room and then over to your bedroom. And then whenever you're done, if you want to, you can export that to a DAW, or you can complete your song inside of the MPC. So those are some of the advantages of standalone devices, is mobility, flexibility, and focus. Those are reasons why I do sometimes like to use those types of devices. Also, having the built-in pads and the way that you access scales is different than if you're using a keyboard, and it may give you different ideas. What I mentioned earlier about being restricted to 16 different notes at once of a certain scale, while that could be seen as an issue for some people, but it also could cause you to compose in a different way than you compose right now. Those limitations could move you in a different direction than you normally go. A lot of times, if you're used to playing and composing using one method, for example, if you're used to composing on a keyboard, you may tend to go to the same notes and the same scales. And so a lot of times your songs will start to sound the same, or your beats, or your melodies. Being restricted to 16 pads could open up a new doorway for you to where you are composing in a completely different way, using different notes than you normally would. Setting a scale for those 16 pads, you're going to compose something that you've never thought of before. And that's what I've found by using these devices. Whether or not you're thinking about buying an MPC3 or upgrading your current MPC, if you want to go ahead and put your thoughts on this subject in the comments, I'd really love to hear from you. And if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, I'd like to know that as well. And if you like what you're seeing on this channel, then I'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.